let Zafar Islam respond to that. That's a very good point you're making, that if you have to go back to voters for municipal elections, then for assembly elections, then for Lok Sabha elections at different times, you are then accountable. Otherwise, you can just bounce for 5 years, nobody sees the MP or the MLA or the ward councillor, and you come back 5 years later. Elections ensure accountability. Zafar Islam, respond to S.Y. Qureshi.
Actually, Rahul, I don't know whether I was audible earlier or not, but as I said earlier, that we are a responsible party and every party will have to become responsible because there should be accountability. And people will make you accountable, people will make you understand that unless you are really willing to serve the people, you will not be able to come back to the power. So, party will become responsible. Every political party will become responsible, follow the footprints which we have followed all along. Secondly, what is more important, that when you really talk about one nation, one election, it has both advantages and disadvantages, pros and cons both. So one has to really evaluate whether it will really benefit the people or whether it will not benefit the people, because there is a lot of restriction during the 5 years. Every now and then elections are taking place and the developmental work gets affected. So it has advantages and it has disadvantages. But if the political parties become responsible and follow the dharma of what they have been elected, then these concepts will become very, very fruitful for the people of this great country.
So will one nation, one election lead to free and fair polls? Here are the responses. 54% of the respondents say yes, there will be free and fair polls if you have one nation, one election. 26% of the respondents in this C-voter poll say no, there will not be free elections if there is one nation, one election, but 54% of the respondents say yes. Is this a threat to federalism? 28% of the respondents in this C-voter data say no, it's not a threat to federalism. 54% of the respondents say one nation, one election is indeed a threat to federalism. Will regional issues then get ignored? 33% of the respondents say yes, regional issues will be ignored. 44% of the respondents say no, regional issues will not be ignored. What impact will this have on the India alliance? Could it lead to the India alliance being shaken up? 29% of the respondents say yes, 45% of the respondents say no. Is this a step towards a presidential form of government? 42% of the respondents in this C-voter political stock exchange data say yes. 31% of the respondents say no. Interesting there, Yashwant Deshmukh, that 42% of the respondents are picking up the sense that this is taking India one step closer to a presidential form of government. Elections, in any case, seem to be becoming more presidential, whether it's at the state or the center. That's something you and I have spoken about in the past. But they're saying the country seems to be heading in that direction.
Well, in the voters' mind, they are already kind of voting in a presidential mode, in that way. Be it the chief ministers, be it electing the prime minister, they are voting for the leader. I mean, across the country, that's what their psyche has been all along. So they are very clear about what they are dealing with. I think, apart from everything else, Rahul, I think the way it should be looked at, that people want elections at the regular interval, not exactly every year all the time. So we need to look into the other models. Like in US, there are elections every 2 years. Probably we need a 2 cycle of elections. One is midterm where, the elections are collaborated and taken along with that. Some with the 2.5-year cycle, some with the 5-year cycle in that way. So that a good balance can be reached. This is an important issue for which much more has to be discussed and, going beyond the binaries of who's gaining politically out of it and who is not gaining politically out of it.
S.Y. Qureshi, has this happened internationally from what you've studied? Countries changing their form of government, moving from a prime ministerial to a presidential form of government? Is that something that we should have at least one person?
Not many. It's been a very rare thing. It doesn't happen that way. But yes, what happens is that consistently, if we go for the electoral reform, there is a lot to be desired, a lot to be done. I think if people are given better democratic rights of being consulted via referendums by the government on various important issues, that will take away the reservation against the elections are being held together.
Let S.Y. Qureshi respond. On a presidential form of government, 42% saying it's one step towards that. Mr. Qureshi.
Yeah, Rahul, countries keep on changing their constitution, many of them. Pakistan, Sri Lanka, but you see what happens there. Fortunately, our Supreme Court laid down the concept of basic structure. We have stability, political stability, because our constitution is stable. If we keep on changing with every Lok Sabha, with every majority, we keep on changing, we will go their way. Do we want that? Is that desirable? So I don't think it's a debate. And the kind of public opinion which is collected by Yashwant, they would not understand federalism and all these issues. That is explained by the Law Commission. They understand the law and the Constitution. Constitution is an expertise, and man in the street doesn't understand. But what man in the street understand? If I live in a village and my Nali's drain outside is clogged, I'm not interested in our Ukraine policy. I'm interested in the Sarpanch and who will get my drain cleaned. You want to mix up the issues? It's extremely important. And at the same time, diluting the concept of simultaneous election by saying, okay, if not once in 5 years, let us do it once in 2 years. So then what is left if you have diluted it so much? Now, number one, original proposal was all 3 tiers have to be taken into consideration. Now, Panchayat election cannot be taken lightly. Constitutionally, it is as important as election to Lok Sabha. Gradually, we stopped talking of Panchayat. We just started talking of 4,120 MLAs and MP. And there also we say, okay, if not 5 years, let us do it once in 2.5 years. What is left? Finally, too many elections. What does it mean? If election is happening in Ghaziabad, how does it affect your health? I don't. If it is happening in Gurgaon, nobody will know. Only you and I go to the polling station only once in 5 years. Not repeatedly.
Zafar Islam, we asked the next question. If this is implemented for the 2024 polls, will you support it? 66% of the respondents saying yes, 26% saying no. Even though it is now clear that the Ramnath Kovind committee will take time to come up with its responses, you see, here's the other thing that I pick up. The government has the ability to build a narrative and to convince people of its point of view, which is why even though it's not being thought of in the short term, somehow you seem to have 2/3 of the respondents saying they'll support it, even if you pushed it through at this moment. Zafar Islam.
See, I don't know what is the agenda the government will be having for this special session. But even if it does come up for one nation, one election, I think most of the political parties will support because they know that the response of the people is very positive. I know Mr. S.Y. Qureshi has a lot of observations, a lot of constraints. He feels that if it does happen, then people's interests will not be safeguarded. But I feel otherwise, that one nation, one election will actually bring a lot of responsibility and accountability in the minds of the people as well as in the minds of the politicians. And it will only benefit for the development of the country, and it will definitely will be a cleaner politics, less money will be involved, and more whatever you promise, you will be forced to deliver, and people will make you accountable and hold you accountable every 5 years.